There we go.
Oh, yeah.
Now we're live.
We had a little
Little bit of
trouble
malfunctions
with
in the
the
background.
get up and go,
Hello,
boys.
everybody. Looks like 3 times the charm. Welcome,
Here we
everybody.
are.
Little bit of difficulties in the background. Welcome to Friday night. We got a little shift going on. We got Jamie's feeling a little under the weather, so Hillbilly and I are going to try and run the ship here and see how we do. Hopefully, it'll crash. Pretty good week over here. We had some bum weather. We got a little bum weather coming in tomorrow night, and some bad stuff next week. So we'll see how all that goes. Maybe it's good week to stay indoors and get some reloading done. Hillbilly, how was your week?
Oh man, pretty good. It cooled back off on us again. Doggone it. We had a few days. It was decent weather, and I'm like so excited. And then it started cooling back off again, and now we're talking like snow and stuff like that here in a few days. So, but other than that, it's been really good. Been a good week. Six, how's your week, buddy?
Oh, it was a interesting week, I can say. Saturday started off with a funeral. I buried my last aunt. I got no more aunt and uncles.
Oh, man.
Sorry to hear that, man.
Yeah.
She lived a good life, 91. So, And then Monday, 46th anniversary for me and the wife. Got me a
Congratulations.
huge steak. Oh, man, that was stuff when I got home. Worked a couple 12-hour days, just been crazy week. So got a bunch of bullets loaded too. So 5 boxes of shotgun shells. So been a pretty good week, I guess. How about you, Rebel?
Store-wise, been kind of slow. It seemed slow today, but at the end of the day, I counted up our till, and it wasn't too bad. So I guess it's just how the folks came in. Wife's worked a lot of overtime. We ran out of groceries in the refrigerator, and I mean, what's at the grocery store? You got pork chops, you got chicken, and you got hamburger, and the steaks ain't worth a crap. So you have to go pick where you buy steaks. And fish, I got one guy I buy fish from, and they were swimming yesterday, so they're expensive. And we've been trying to watch our pennies. So, yeah, tonight I ate a can of oysters and put them in an omelet.
There you go.
Country boy can't survive. But anyway, last weekend I was out in short sleeves wiring up my boat, got my Garmin unit and transducer mounted. That was a little scary. Brand new boat, drilling holes in the transom. I'm like, So lots of silicone, E6000 glue, and now I'm wiring up 4 LED white lights on the corners, and then I've got green strip lights going around the side. So as y'all know, I like to fly fish, but crappies beware. I'm gonna murder them soon, as soon as it gets warm.
Good show. Andy, how was your week?
Very eventful at work. We're just so busy, it's ridiculous. But the good side of it is I'm getting so much more tin at the moment.
Oh, well, Always that.
I'm bringing home about 7 pounds a day. That's how much testing I'm doing on that's how much the dipping parts in and getting the lead-free solder off and putting on the regular stuff. So it's like good stuff though. But and loading up a storm, and getting rid of all my 9mm my bullets that I had laying around. I had a ton of I don't know, berries, double plated ones for the 9mm, and I probably got 3,000, maybe around 3,000 that I casted lead a while ago and whatnot. And I was debating if I should just melt them down and back to lead or not. And I said that I'll blow them up. So I'm about halfway through that batch and still having issues with I loaded the berries and I had about 600 or 700 of those bullets, and I only had one that didn't fit the gas gauge. You just had to, put it through the press the second time, and it was fine. And the lead ones, 1 out of 12, 1 out of 15. Don't want to go all the way in. I always got to mix up the Wilson, and it's a chamber gauge, and then I have the other one that has, the cutaway, and they fit in there, but not the other one. So I have no idea.
Yeah.
Other than that, been a good week. Just busy. I come home from work every night after I sit with the wife a little bit and clean up and check my crap on the computer, and I go downstairs an hour and a half and fire up the Dillon Square D and load up a bunch of stuff. That's about it.
Very good.
Oh, snow's coming. You said snow. Yeah, we're being quoted 4 to 6 inches. You're supposed to get more than us.
Yeah, we're supposed to get like 3 to 5 Saturday and then 4 to 6 Sunday. But it's one storm. It just goes from Saturday afternoon to Sunday morning.
Right.
So all told, it's like 10 inches or so.
Yeah, we're I'm south of you. We're at the edge of the south storm, so we're getting the least amount. The North Shore is going to get 6 to 8 inches. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Pat, how was your week? Got Mama all moved in?
Yep. Got everything in from out of the car and back into the bunker. So doing good. No, it's been a real hectic week. About ready to start calving. So getting cattle shifted around, things off stock, things back home. Messing with a new gun this week and getting it tuned and everything and getting it sighted in with the dot on top of it, which is soon to come. So, but yeah, other than that, man, things are about ready to get real busy around Casa de Pat in the bunker. To steal a little line from Viejo. Thanks for having me on, buddy. Appreciate it.
Well, good to have you. Walter, what's going on in California?
Well, pretty much same old California political nonsense that goes on every day around these parts, but we kind of cram our ears full of you're pro and go shooting anyway, and so the heck with them. But we don't have to listen to them if we don't want to. Around my digs here, we had some rain this week, and not a lot, but I just got a notice from the county that said, "Hey, stand by. We got what we would call a major winter storm coming up next week with a pretty significant rain insult." And what happens here, 2 inches of rain in lots of parts of the country doesn't mean much, but our coastal mountain range here, the topsoil is pretty thin. There's granite underneath it. And when that soil gets heavy, which doesn't take much, I mean, a lot of it's only 2-3 feet deep. It comes down like a kid on a slip and slide and causes all kinds of problems. And so, they tell folks in advance, hey, get your sandbags out, keep the property safe, get your ditches dug, all that kind of stuff. So other than that, I'll probably get a quarter of an inch right here. And I live on an ancient sand dune. The water hits the ground here and just goes right straight down in. So we don't do much flooding around my place. But shooting and stuff this week. I did get out to the range. I'm not supposed to be in the sun yet with this facial thing happening. We're just about done with that. Another couple weeks I ought to have my face back, but I went to the range anyway. And it's covered and more or less out of the sun.
Yeah.
And I got some casting done this week, so that means I got more loading and shooting to get done. I'm going to go to the range again Monday. And so I got some video stuff done. I got an extra video coming out on Sunday on both YouTube and Rumble. That's a little different from what I normally do. It's kind of a gear related thing, reloading stuff.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm good. Life has been pretty good. And now to the most important guy here. Hey, Mo. What's up, buddy?
Hi. What's going on, everybody? Greetings from Central California. No, everything's all good, man. You know, it's good. Yeah, the mudslides is a big deal in the coastline. I live in the valley, so the only thing we have to worry about is pretty much the infrastructure holding the water in the pipes. You know, other than that, it's good to go, man. Just playing with my new toy, and I got Bruno over here making a fuss about something. But yeah, that's about it. Appreciate the invite, guys. It's been a while since I've been in this chat, so it's great. It's awesome.
Oh, welcome. Good to see you. Good to see your video last week too.
Yeah, I just did a video of Bruno. I don't know if you guys had a chance to check it out, but yep, that's about it, guys. That's all I got.
Hey, we got Red Rider rating in the reloading in the chat here. Hey, here.
Oh man, I haven't seen hide nor hair of him in
No, I haven't seen him in a
a
while.
long time.
Hey, buddy.
So we're gonna talk a little bit tonight about pressures. Jason come up with a topic for us. What they are, where you see them. It's not just something to worry about for hand loaders. It's something to be aware of with factory as well. So that's the top topic. But as always, we're going to stay watching the side chat. So where this blossoms and blooms into, we'll see where it goes. But
CW, I think we ought to, as we address pressures too, we ought to talk about the differences between like bolt gun, revolver, and then an AR, which
Sure.
is those signs are very different.
Yep, I'm sure we will get there. So let's start. I know Hillbilly hasn't done too much reloading, but you want to add in anything there with factory stuff to get us started?
Well, most of the pressure that I experience, it don't have nothing to do with firearms. Sometimes it's from my wife, sometimes it's bodily, but
Too many tacos?
yeah. But yeah, I've never really had to deal with it a whole lot. Well, of course, you shoot revolvers, you see, realize the pressure it's made in there, but until I went to like an AR platform, with gas, with the gas system, I never really had to worry about that too much, just as far as hunting and shooting shotguns and all that stuff. But yeah, I'm really interested to get schooled tonight on some of this stuff.
Sure.
Number 6.
Sure.
Can you blow me up?
Sure enough, we can.
Let's see if I can get it to focus here.
You have to say the word focus most usually.
Yeah. There we go.
Ooh,
That split,
Wow.
Yeah, buddy.
and then let me get this other one here. Now it's only in the middle of the case. It's not on top or bottom.
Now is that pressure or is that
Well,
old brass?
That's what I want to ask. Is that pressure or is it just wore out brass?
Well,
it's
I
Dead brass.
go ahead,
Both.
CW.
it's certainly pressure, but it's also a sign of a bad piece of brass. If you don't know how brass is formed, a lot of it is drawn, and
Right.
when it's drawn, it's kind of relied upon that it's going to be even because it's all the same material, the same temperature, and it flows nicely. But it's not a precise science. It's not a constant 100% across the board, and you can have areas in brass that are a little bit thinner and such. You can
Right.
have some alloy issues in the brass alloy when it's created, and all those things can lead to brass failure down the road. So I would say that's probably some fatigued older brass.
Actually, that was a batch of brass by Federal that would do that on factory rounds.
Yeah, another interesting point with that specifically, if anybody watches Hootie Hoo, he had a gun recently where I think it was a Rossi. He blamed the gun, sent it back to the factory because he was getting split cases. He sent it back to the factory. They checked it all out. They said, we don't find any problems with chamber dimensions or anything. Sent it back to him. It was a cheap gun. He figured that it was the gun. He kind of wrote it off that it was the gun.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it was, if he found another box of ammo or if he bought another box of ammo, but he had been using the same ammo. And he got it back and he put the same ammo in it again. And he got splits in it again. And then he tried different ammo and it stopped. So was it the gun or was it bad batch of brass that he happened to have brand new? So that's
This
what I
was
think.
some brass that Federal made right after the 32 H&R came out.
Yeah.
And you'd get factory ammo that would split like that, and they were claiming it was bad brass.
Yeah.
I'm still run across it every now and then.
I like Federal brass as a rule, but I have noticed recent years that their 223 stuff tends to get loose primer pockets pretty quickly. And I know I'm not pushing pressures hard, so it really shouldn't be. But loose primer pockets are a sign of pressure. The brass moves with high pressure. Now, to move brass, you're talking some serious pressure.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen with any kind of safe load. It's beyond safe loading to get brass to move that way. So that's what I mean when I say I know I'm not loading really hot loads, but I found loose primer pockets pretty quickly. So
And now I'm getting a lot of them just, especially in the 38s. It's because I don't know how many times this stuff's been reloaded. I don't even know if it's mine to begin with. Is it?
Yeah.
38s are supremely low, very, very, very low pressure. So that brass
Right.
should last
Could last quite a while.
definitely, nearly.
But when you're doing this cowboy shooting, you don't always guarantee you're getting your brass back. So
Exactly.
you have no idea how many times it's been loaded.
Yeah. Yeah, no idea.
You just shoot it and hope for the best.
The more times you shoot it, the more it gets fatigued, and the higher the pressure is, the faster it gets fatigued.
The only other pressure times I've had with pressure is I was trying some of that Shooter's World that's similar to Varget Precision, I think is what it's called. And my 270 didn't like it, and it was sticking the bolt.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's a good segue. That's a sticking bolt is something you find in a bolt action, primarily a bolt action. And what happens is you get a hard bolt lift. So after you fire the gun, your bolt will be harder to lift than it would be normally. And that's a sign that you had something happen when you fired that cartridge. And usually it's from pressure. And what happens is that brass expands when it fires, and then it comes back down. That's the function of brass.
And this was on starting load too.
And it stays big because you actually move the brass.
Right.
In other words, you overpressured it to the point where it didn't come back down in size.
What it ended up being is that too fast of a powder. It spiked the pressure and came back down.
Yep.
Because the velocities were still low. But it spiked that pressure up so fast and back down, it was sticking the bolt.
Yep. Yeah, there's some pretty obscure things that can happen with pressures, and some of it's pretty scary. But thankfully, we don't normally see it. Everything's relatively safe, so we're okay with things. So, Rebel, what do you want to add?
You might have to tell me to shut up. I could
I
go
know
on
it's
about
kind of
this
hard.
forever.
I could tell everybody everything I know here, and it would take the whole show. So I'm gonna spread it around.
Yeah. So I'll just be brief. Sometimes, especially if you're a bench rest shooter, custom rifle shooter, and you're used to bumping the shoulder back a thousandths, 2,000ths, very minimum. And you get in that habit, and then you do it in a factory rifle, factory chamber. It can mimic pressure. It's not pressure. You get a heavy bolt lift. I mean, to the point of where you're like, oh my God, I'm testing the solder on the bolt handle because I'm kicking it up. And I had this happen to me with a 22-250 and in a Remington, factory Remington heavy barrel. And I was bumping it back 2,000ths, and I called my gunsmith, and I said, dude, have you ever experienced this? He said, how far are you bumping that shoulder back? I said, 2,000ths. He said, dude, that's a factory chamber. Bump that sucker back about 4. I bumped it back 4, problem went away. Done. So make sure that you have the ability to measure base to ogive. When you get into a little bit more base to datum with a Hornady comparator, and that way you know how far you're bumping that shoulder back when you set up your resizing die. The other thing I see, and Red Raider can test it, back me up on this. Most guys, they'll look up and say the Burger book. The Burger book, reloading book, is fantastic. First of all, Walt Burger's story is fascinating, and yes, I read the whole entire manual, and him making his own bullets and everything. But the Burger book is the most conservative book I think I've ever found. And I'm not, all you new reloaders, put on your earmuffs. Don't listen to me, okay? The Burger book, as most books, but the Burger book especially, starts really, 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 really low. And these days of hard to get components, I tell people to start in the middle. And me, myself, if I'm looking at the Burger book, because it has cartridges that a lot of loading manuals don't have, like 6 PPC, 6 BR, 7 BR, blah, blah, blah. You could start at max in the Burger book and be okay. And just as long as you know what the pressure signs are, and that's all about the primer. And when that primer starts flowing to the edge, and there's no crease there anymore, it's flat. And you got to understand, okay, I don't have my firing pin bushed like a true bench rest gun. I didn't pay that pony up for that money. I don't have a bushing in it. It can flow back into that hole around the firing pin and make that dimple a little high as it flows out. And it makes it appear like it's got too much pressure. Now, I learned a hard lesson with a 260 Ackley, which, 260 is a 308 case, neck down to 6.5. And everybody said, go up 3%. Well, that was objective. So I started at 2% and worked up and 25-inch barrel, and I hit a grade ES at 2,900 feet per second. I'm like, okay, that's humming. And I had Hornady brass. And about the third reloading, I pulled the trigger and got a face full of gas. It blew out the primer, obliterated it. And what's going on? What did I screw up? I didn't screw up at all, except I didn't pay any attention to the tension of the primer going up into the primer pocket. And the primer pockets were shot. I got Lapua brass. I've reloaded it 10 times and nailed it. It's still working. A good friend of mine we call BR Bob, Bench Rest Bob, says 100 pieces of Lapua 6BR will absolutely wear out a barrel if you keep it annealed and take care of it properly. And I believe him. So good brass is a thing too. There are things I don't buy high dollar brass for, but a lot of my rifles I'll go with Lapua, Norma, Nosler. God, Nosler, terrible expensive. I think it's made by Norma. You can correct me if I'm wrong, CW, but it's ready to shoot. You just put a primer in it, put powder in it, put a bullet in it, and go. And I always look at that primer. If it's flowing out to the edge, okay, I'm hot. I'm there. And there's enough information out there from other bench rest shooters about PPC and 6BR, especially like 6BR. 28 to 29 grains of vargets where it's at, and when you're approaching over 29, you're starting to flatten those things out pretty good, and you better be careful. So I always look at my primers. I always look for heavy bolt lift. If you got a Savages all have a heavy bolt lift just because of the way they're designed. So there's kits that you can take care of that with, but I just prefer to get used to the gun and know, don't beat your bolt open if you happen to overload it. And I had a customer that had his first custom rifle built in a 6.5 Creedmoor, and for whatever reason, he went off the reservation, and he was a new reloader. And he loaded, CW, you may remember this. I posted this on 300 Blackout. He loaded 4 grains of Varget over max as a starting load. 4 grains. And he fired his first shot out of a nice Krieger barrel. And I was down at the range at that time. I'd shot that morning, was getting ready to go up and up the shop on Saturday. And he held up his bolt, and he said, with a piece of brass stuck to it, and he said, "Hey, Mike, what's this?" I said, "Give me the bolt. Meet me at the shop." And me and BR Bob took 2 screwdrivers, little screwdrivers, and pried that piece of brass off the top of the bolt. It had flowed around the ejector, stuck, welded, and once we got it off, 6.5 Creedmoor was imprinted backwards on the bolt face. So how much pressure does it take for brass to imprint steel? I'd say about 90K. And that's a testament to Remington action. But he was duly chastised when he got back up to the shop, and we told him to, why don't you follow a reload manual, for heaven's sakes? He'd just been hanging around the shop listening to people talk, and he thought he could do whatever he wanted to do. And 4 grains of Varget higher, way too hot. It was definitely a compressed load, and probably when he loaded them that night and came back the next day, they had probably pushed out a little bit, so he was way into the lands. That's it, CW. I'll shut me up. I'm done.
Well, you've broached a whole many topics that not a lot of people are going to follow everything on. So, you know what, we can touch on everything, but let's continue around the room with some personal experiences, and we'll limit it to one particular thing so we can get all the way around, and then we'll touch on different firearms and different aspects of everything everybody has said. So, Andy, what would you like to add?
Well, I'm not how should I put it? I shoot a lot, but my reloading time is high because of all the pre-testing I do before I use brass again. Even if I pick up 5 pieces at the range, I'm still testing every piece. Primer pocket size is one of the first things I test after I clean my, deprime sized and clean my brass. Primer pockets get tested. Not on so much 38, but I feel one that goes in too light. I mark the case, so I get to watch it when I shoot it. If I see any lift in that primer at all, it goes in the garbage. Or, I mark it so next time I can. I've ejected primers and tested, and I threw the brass away, but it didn't have to probably. But why risk it?
Sure.
Sizing is important. If something's wrong with a sizing die and you're undersizing the brass, you've just created pressure problems. The same thing like you mentioned, bump back neck sizing only. I've tried that. I prefer to do a full resize every time, and I can adjust the bump back still with a full resize. So I've never really liked neck sizing because the rest of that case, it might be formed to that rifle, but it's growing. So there's a point where you should be resizing it. And the other thing for me, I don't have much in the way of hot loads. My shoulder can't take a lot of things anymore. So on a AR platform, and I only have that in 300 blackout and 223. I don't load even a maximum load. I don't find a need to, because I find a 3/4 of the way up load, and then I do a ladder test to find the null. And what I'm going to get an extra 75 feet per second, is that going to make that much of a difference? I'm just plinking. When I'm shooting longer range and I'm loading up to 30-06 on the hot side, everyone is measured on a balance beam. I don't trust anything digital to do something like that. It's a tested load that I've worked up in the past. And, when you pull that trigger, it went off. I mean, let's face it, I don't know the numbers because I'm bad with keeping things in my head, but 40-64 and the 30-06, I'm not sure where the max load is, but I have a load that works with a specific bullet, and I'm good to, 600 yards with it. So I'm happy with that. And again, when I shoot a hot load, that case is inspected everywhere, every which way but loose, before it's reloaded again.
Yes, really, really good practice.
That paper clip down the brass to the rim to see if there's anything, cracking, anything like that. Look for it. That's about all I really could to add to it. I mean, I've only had one problem, and it took a while to figure out what happened. That was with my 223 bolt action. And I mean, they're tremendously reduced loads that work fine. And when I blew up, like she said, we couldn't get the bolt open. I let the gunsmith take care of that, and I screwed up the face of the bolt. And I mean, it was bad. And it's like, but you're only talking like there's like 6 grains of powder in this thing. That works fine normally. And down the line, from that loading session of bullets, I pulled all the bullets and didn't pull them apart, but I took all the bullets and I was weighing them and whatnot. And I found one that was 55 grains heavier than it should have been. I said, how could it be 55 grains heavier? Single loading them. And I'll tell you that we know exactly what happened at this point. I put in a bullet, seated it, went to go to the next stage, and I go, wait a minute, there's no bullet in here. I must have missed it. The bullet fell in the case.
Oh.
Okay. So when I fired that, it must have happened more than once because it happened in the rifle. I mean, it was one boom. It wasn't like boom or something. It was just one boom. It was definitely more powerful than it should have been. I hit the target. It was the first round. So what happened? And there was a bullet lodged in the barrel. So there were 2 bullets in there. So again, I usually pay really good attention, so I can't believe I missed that. I seated a bullet, went to the next thing, there was no bullet, and I just backed it up and said, I must not put it in, put another one in it. So that was it. And the other one didn't fall in, so the bullet I was using must have been small, and it just fell right in.
Yeah, where that first bullet held the second one up.
Well, 223, it would have pushed it down into the case.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because of the length of it, so the length of the bullet. So that was the only bad experience I had. But you know, trying to figure out what actually happened was the fun part. But never had anything else happen.
Yeah, well, it brings up another, a whole bunch of other points and a whole bunch of other things that are touched on, not really directly associated with pressures, but indirectly for sure. Pat, what kind of experiences have you had, or what can you bring to light, or would you like to talk about or mention?
Actually, I helped my dad reload quite a bit when I was a kid. Reloaded a lot of 270, 22 250, and a couple other cartridges that are escaping my mind right now. So that's kind of who I learned from, and I got all his stuff. And, I reload all that 9mm. 7 and one thing that I really got to have fun with that I had to watch because 7.62 by 54R on that. I started playing around a little bit, and I had 3 different brass types. And just like I can't remember who said it, all brass is not created equal. Some more is elastic, and some just has junk metal. And I think it was PP2, I think, versus Cellar Below, when I was starting to ramp up the powder charge on there. I'd have to go back and look in my book and see exactly what powder I was using and everything. But, running a full resize die on there, and I had the neck and the shoulder. I wasn't quite to the top of the charge, but, pressure on a weak case, once fired, there's a, just once fired shot, factory ammo case, resize, put through, everything checked, was good. But one versus the other, starting to ramp it up just a little bit, started splitting those damn, the shoulder and the neck on there. So just keep that in mind, guys, that all brass is not created equal. Some will take it and some won't. Especially if you're going on the cheaper side. So anyway, that's all I got.
We're getting close to going through the room, so we'll go quick over to Walter and see what Walter wants to add.
Sure, I'll put in a couple quickies here. One thing is, if you are a reloader, and maybe you're a beginner, maybe you're not, but a lot of times folks will only be looking in their data sections at the charges, and you need to look over into that last column and look at the pressures that are involved with each of these cartridges, and some of them will surprise you. You take a little 9mm round, and you think, well, it's just a little round with a little bitty, 110 grain bullet or something. Well, a 9mm is really high pressure. And if you start overloading those things, it's not going to take a whole lot to damage a bolt face or something like that, and compared to a 45 Colt, which is relatively low pressure round compared to a bunch of the other ones, 13,000, something like that, 14,000 someplace for a hot one. But that 9mm pressure can be up pushing pretty close to what a 44 mag pressure might be like. So you're dealing with some high pressures there. So you need to kind of pay attention to that and make sure you're not going to overshoot those things. One example that most people probably would not be familiar with is one that's usually not in the books, and that's a 45 Cowboy Special, which is a very shortened 45 Colt round. It's shortened down to about the size of a 45 ACP case. And there's no load data. Well, there is, but not in the manuals. It's pretty easy to say, well, it's the same case volume as a 45 ACP. So let's just use 45 ACP data. And you can to a certain extent, but you got to pay attention to the pressure, because some of our 45 Colt revolvers not really designed for a 45 ACP pressure, which is higher than
high for 45 Colt.
Yes. So, you're talking about 18,000 PSI for a 45 ACP compared to maybe 13 or and a half or something like that for a 45 Colt. So you got to look at those pressures in your data tables and pay attention to that and think to yourself, hey, am I going to be overworking my firearm here? Our heavy duty Ruger Blackhawks and stuff, they're pretty robust and can handle some of those bigger loads. But some of the other ones aren't. Yeah.
Right? Italian aren't. And just so you know, like you said, the 45 ACP is up pushing 20, which isn't a whole lot of pressure. But when you've got a cartridge that's designed to work in the 14,000 range, and you look at, most people have heard of Ruger level loads. Mm-hmm. Well, those are operating in the low 20s, 20, 21, 23.
Right.
So the 45 ACP is right behind that. Yep. So, it's really not safe for some of the firearms that are chambered in that big 45 Colt.
Yeah, you got to pay attention to those pressures in the books.
It's not
something worth looking at. Yeah,
not always just used to looking at more powder that creates the problem. It's the wrong powders. It's the wrong overall lengths. It's the wrong bullets. Like Andy said, 2 bullets. If let's just say 5 grains of powder is good for a 200 grain bullet, and you put 2 bullets in there, you got 400 grains. Guess what?
Yeah,
it's no longer 5 grains of powder.
Right.
That's good.
Yeah.
Mario,
so there you go. That's enough for me.
Hey guys,
as a new
a
loader,
lot of good stuff. I am not as a seasoned reloader like a lot of you guys do. I still have a tendency of being a little careful. I have a tendency of doing the 5 and 5 rule, which is basically I test load 5 and I write down what they are, and same thing, and I go up to like the middle where I want to be at, and I test them out a lot. But one thing I have a tendency of doing is I take a lot of notes. Whenever I go to the range, I always have a notebook with me, and I think about how is this performing for me and stuff like that. I mean, everybody has their own way of doing things. I have a tendency of forgetting things, so that's why I write it. But everybody has their own way of doing things. I also do have a tendency of being more respectful with certain powders over the others. And I think a lot of those powders you guys already talked about, but that's just my way of doing things.
Yep. And there's so much more to talk about this, and we've got a couple of really good points in the side chat. But let's we're a little past due for going through the side chat, so let's type in pressures and we'll call you out and see who we've got joining us here tonight. We got 53 people out there on my counter, so we got quite a few out there. Jason, you want to run through? Put you to work a little? Thanks for joining us, pal.
I'll try to keep up. Howdy, folks. Good to see everyone out there. Good to be
Hey, buddy.
here.
Hey, Scotsman.
A little late. Had to take care of work there. Let's see. We got Walter was first. We got Andy. We got 6. Big Al. And there it takes off. We got Mike Hester, Pat in the Bunker, Edward Petty, Gary, Tommy Boy, GGW, Andre, Harm, James Pollard, Service, KFW, Crash. Thank God I got a wheel. I can move this. Hillbilly Up, Bama Dad, Papa's Place, Bobby Barlow, Old One Guy, Floridian, Tim S, Terry's Reloading. Let's see, Preacher's Day Off, Glenn Davis. Let's see, Red Raider, Walks Fletcher, Paul Loud. That's all we got for right now.
Good. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We got a really good turnout. So let's get a couple of comments there in the side, and there's so much to this. Let's just back up a little bit and start more from scratch. So pressures are what happens when you pull the trigger. You know, your firing pin hits your primer starts your powder on fire, and it creates a large gas that rapidly expands, which pushes your bullet out of the barrel. That's all formulated with the amount of powder and the length of the bullet and the weight of the bullet to operate within the operating constraints of that particular cartridge. It changes for every cartridge. Lower pressure stuff, pistol stuff can still show pressures, can still have problems because it's operating outside of its range that it's designed for. Sometimes when you get really, really low pressure stuff, it doesn't show. And like Mike Hester was saying about primers, watching primer flow. Well, guess what? You're not going to see primers change within the operating ranges of some of these really low pressure cartridges. So what do you get there for high pressure? How do you know you have high pressure there? Well, you've got a couple of things still going on for you. You've got sound. If you're shooting your gun, bang, 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 and all of a sudden you get a boom, stop. Something happened. Check that case, check your gun, check everything. Because that's one of the signs of high pressure, as is recoil. If you're shooting something, a light 9mm or 380 or something, and it's just barely moving, and all of a sudden it moves a lot, something happened. Check to make sure everything's okay. That's a pressure sign. So you got sound, recoil. Now we get into the rifles. You've got the same thing, sound and recoil, but you also have bolt action. You have a hard bolt lift, which we already mentioned, and that's when you chamber a cartridge and it goes in like butter, nice and easy. You fire a cartridge, it opens right up and comes right out, and you fire another one, you get maybe a little more recoil, you get a little more sound, or you get something different, something not normal, and all of a sudden the bolt doesn't want to lift. It takes a little bit of pressure. You got to bump it with your palm, or you got to really yank on it to get it to open. Well, what's happened is that brass has been opened up to seal up the chamber, which is what it's supposed to do, so you don't get the gases coming back, but it didn't come back down in size. And the reason it didn't is because it was beyond its operating range. So primers are going to react at around 35-ish thousand PSI. So you're going to start to see primers moving, flowing, flattening. I always advise people not to just watch primers. Yes, absolutely, primers will show pressure. But you don't know if the wrong primer got into that case somehow. Wrong meaning you've got pistol primers, you've got Magnum pistol primers, you've got match pistol primers, you've got rifle primers, you've got regular rifle primers, you've got Magnum rifle primers, you've got match rifle primers. You've got military primers, you've got military large primers. So they're not all created equal. And the differences are the composition, the amount of flame they produce, and the thickness of the cup of the metal that they're made out of. And that's the biggest key to looking at what primers are going, what they're doing. So if you've got a cartridge like, say, 9mm, and you're shooting it, and it's like Walter said, you get a little high pressure there, a little hot cartridge. Well, you look at your case, and your primer's flat. Well, you could take that exact same load and drop a small rifle Magnum primer in that 9mm case, because it'll fit just fine, and pull the trigger again, and guess what? You're probably not going to have a flat or misshapen primer at all. Does that mean you have no pressure now? Heck no, you probably got a little more because you got more volume from that primer, and it's a hotter spark, a hotter flame. So you probably have increased your pressure just a little bit, even more than you had before. Yet your primer didn't show you anything, because it's operating at a pressure level around 35, 36,000, which is where a 9mm hot load is going to be, it's not enough to move that primer. If you step up to your 270, which is operating 60, 62, you can flatten a primer pretty good with a warm load.
Oh, yeah.
So you put a large pistol primer in a light 270 load. First of all, let me back up just a tiny bit. Small primers, they're all the same size, identical. They're all identical. Rifle, pistol, they're all identical. When you step up to large size, they're the same diameter. They're 0.210 in diameter, but pistol primers are just a little bit shorter than rifle primers. So you put a pistol primer in a rifle case, it's going to be a little bit seated deeper. So right off the way, if you feel it and look at it, you're going to notice it. Adversely, if you put a rifle primer in a pistol case, like put a large rifle primer in a 45 ACP, let's say,
it's going to be proud. Yeah,
it's going to. You can feel it. It's going to rock if you put it on a table. It's not going to sit right. You're going to know something's up. So that's, having said all that. That pistol primer in that 270, baby, that's going to smear, flatten like crazy on the lightest load in the book. And why? Is it too high pressure? No, it's the wrong primer. So that's what I mean when I say you can't only go by a primer's look to show pressure. It is a sign of pressure, but it's not by itself. You need to have something else with it.
And in an AR, you've got ejector swipe. You've got the location of where your brass is falling. So if you got a really well-tuned AR, which I know CW does and I do, you can sit there and shoot all day off a bench and put them in a 5-gallon bucket. If you get one all of a sudden that shoots off to 1 o'clock at 27 feet, something's going on. And 9 times out of 10, if you look at that, the base of that, you'll have a deeper ejector swipe on that semi-automatic, because you're dealing with the whole action of the reciprocating bolt and direct impingement gas, and of course I imagine piston would show that too as well. I don't shoot
that
many.
has nothing to do with it. It's just how it opens.
Yeah.
But what Mike's talking about is when you have a semi-auto versus a bolt action. You have a bolt action, you're working that bolt. You're camming that bolt over with your lever. So by the time you pull the trigger, you can't open that bolt fast enough to move that bolt while it's still under pressure. But in an AR or some different gas-operated semi-auto rifles, that gas system is going to open when that gas comes back and hammers that bolt. So your bullet goes down the barrel, it goes up into a port, the gases run back down and hits that bolt and moves that bolt back. That bolt's coming back, period. If that case is still under high pressure, so it's, again, when a cartridge goes off, the pressure is expanding gases. It expands the brass in your chamber to seal it so nothing comes back in your face, pushes the bullet out the barrel. Well, if that bolt is trying to open that bolt, trying to pull that brass out while it's still expanded, something's got to give. And what happens is you get swipes, you get marks and gouges in the back of your brass, and that's why you're seeing it. If you're operating within pressure ranges, you're not going to see that. Right. And what Mike said about position of the brass, when you've got a high pressure situation, your brass is going to come out of the bolt, out of the ejection port faster, harder, and it's going to go to a different point. Now there's also overgassing and undergassing. That's totally different. That's not necessarily too much. That's just, it's happening at the wrong cycle point within where your action works. So we're not talking about that. But assuming everything works good, like a good functioning rifle, and you get a high pressure cartridge, that brass is going to go farther away because you've got more velocity in your bolt, or it's going to go to a different place because it's hammering back and coming out of the action faster and different. Two other signs with a semi-auto.
A really good example, a friend of mine got it in his noggin that he wanted a 300 Win Mag AR. So I call it an AR-5 because it's way too big to be an AR-10. And there's very few of those on the market. I'm not going to mention any manufacturers, but he got one and wasn't satisfied with it and wanted to trade for another one. And I brokered that deal. And anyway, he got this thing and he's loading for it. He's loading it like it's a bolt action. And I get over to his house to see how it's shooting. He's got a little 100-yard range there, and he's got this pile of brass that the rims are torn off of. I mean, half a 5-gallon bucket of 300 Win Mag brass. And he's like, I don't understand. I'm just tearing this brass up. And I said, you got an adjustable gas block. Have you got it turned all the way down? Yes. I got it turned all the way down. It was a 3-position adjustable gas block. In my opinion, it should have been a 15-position adjustable gas block. But anyway, he finally got a load that worked, and we're shooting it over the chronograph, and he had a incredibly low ES of like 8. And I looked at him, and he shot a little bitty group, and I said, congratulations on your brand new 308. Your 308, because he was shooting it at about 308, 30-06 speeds. That's how far he had to slow it down so the brass would survive. And I mean, that bolt carrier was, my God, it was massive. It was 10 inches. You know, that's a lot of movement.
Mm.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into an AR style gun to make it work, and it's a lot based on the volume of gas that's created, the size of the case capacity, bore diameter. I mean, dwell time. There's all kinds of, then you get your whole buffer system. I mean, there's a lot there, and to just say
it'll blow your mind.
Magnum, that's it can be done. They're out there, but it's not. There's a reason there's not a lot of them.
One of the worst things ever was on the 300 Blackout forum when someone would write in and they'd be a new first-time caller, so to speak. And, hey, CW, hey, Rebel, hey, Delit, hey, all you guys that have been here a while. My gun's not cycling. Why? And you're like, holy crap, I can't. You cannot troubleshoot an AR on that little information, and so you'd end up asking all kind of dumb questions. A bolt action's easy, a revolver's easy, whatever. But yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, there's a lot to an AR, and especially. And troubleshooting one of those, unless you're there in person, you're going to have a hard time doing it. I've seen all kinds of issues with ARs over the years, and yeah, it's some of them you can diagnose fairly easily, but the majority you really need to see it in person to see exactly what the gun's doing.
Yeah.
Now here's a scenario that probably a lot of people have seen. And you can see it with lever actions. You can see it with a bolt action, but generally you don't. But semi-autos for sure, and that is factory ammo. So we're gonna talk to something that everybody can relate to, and that is when you feed your bullet from your magazine into your chamber, it gets hung up a little bit and maybe pushes the bullet back in the case a little, and then you close the bolt and it goes right in. You figure, okay, it's fine, right? It went in the gun, and you pull the trigger, and all of a sudden you got a lot of recoil, and you got something different. Maybe you got some gas blown back. Maybe you blew a primer out, and you say, "My goodness, this is factory ammo. This ammo's bad." Well, let's back up and look at what happened here, and let's just say it's a 30-30, just for the case of argument. You push your bullets in the magazine, and they're tubular, so you got 5-6 bullets on top of each other. You open that lever, and maybe you don't open it all the way, so the bullet kind of hangs up a little. And then you try and close it again. Well, it's halfway in between, and it kind of squishes it a little bit. And then you open the lever a little farther, and the lifter pops it up. And okay, I'm all right. It closed, fine. You didn't see anything. You figured you just bobbled. That's nothing, right? Well, what you did was you pushed the bullet back in the case.
Now you got a compressed load.
What you've done is, in effect, you've reduced your powder capacity, because again, this is all put together in such a way that X amount of powder fills the case just so much. The bullet goes in, only goes so deep, It only goes so close to the rifling. All these things play together to give you a proper pressured functioning load.
Who's snoring?
You change something.
Yep.
In this case, you shortened your overall length. You pushed the bullet in. You made the bullet closer to the powder. You reduce the airspace in that case, however much you push the bullet in. And if that was a really hot load to begin with, or on the fringe of maximum, you're probably over pressure, and it was perfectly fine. And it's something that you created. It's not necessarily anything the manufacturer did, or your gun's something wrong with it, or whatever. It's basically an operator error. So
same thing can happen with an autoloader pistol.
it can happen with anything. Yeah.
As that round goes up into the chamber and the nose of the bullet touches the hood and it pushes it over, you might shove that bullet back in the case, particularly if your crimp wasn't quite strong enough. And all of a sudden now you got a lower case volume with the same amount of powder and whammo.
Yep.
Well, one thing to watch with that, and a good example of that is all of us carry, right? So all of us have hollow points usually is what we carry, and you'll rack one in the chamber, and at the end of the day, maybe you'll empty it, and then you'll put that back in, and you'll rack it again. If you rack that enough times, that same bullet, it's gonna see itself back. I've seen it happen many times.
Yeah, just riding up the ramp.
Mm-hmm.
Just riding up the ramp. For sure.
So you really got to pay attention, and the best way to do that, especially with carry rounds like that, is to rotate your rounds in your magazine. Rotate them around.
Rotate them and shoot them every 30 days or so, and just cycle them through the gun and put new in, fresh in.
Yep.
You guys put Billy to sleep, man.
Yeah, someone's snoring.
Yeah, someone's old man River somewhere. Or Rip Van Winkle.
So another thing that we touched on briefly, I think Dr. Zink there mentioned it, is too long. So what happens in that situation, your bullet is too long. So somehow your bullet jumped out of the case mouth, and it's still in the case. It still fits in the gun, but it's long. So when you chamber it, let's just say we use the bolt action where you've got some camming power, some horsepower, yourself working it. That bullet might be all the way forward and actually into the rifling. Now, with a jacketed bullet, that when there's no jump, that can spike pressures. And that can cause you to have high pressures in an otherwise safe loading, when the only thing that changed was your bullet is actually in the rifling. So generally, that's not something you find very often, but it's something to be aware of that could cause it. Hand loading for sure. It's something that can be done because you didn't look at the stats. You misread the numbers when you seated your bullets. It's something you created at the loading bench.
Right.
Got a question. How does this work when you have semi-automatic rifles versus bolt guns? As far as like crimping and stuff like that, do you do much crimping if you're doing bolt?
That's one of the reasons you see a lot of crimping with those action styles, is because they're coming out of a magazine, they're coming up a ramp, so they need a little more durability. So that's where the crimping will come in to effect, benefits you. It also benefits like Magnum pistol rounds, where you have a large volume of powder, that you need that little bit of an infinitesimal delay. You don't want that bullet to just eke out under primer flash. You can get that if you have such a weak neck tension. Just that primer can make that bullet jump, and then it's going to change and give you all kinds of troubles that you may not have any idea what's going on or how that came to be. It's something we see in Magnum revolvers, even with crimped bullets. That bullet can jump out of the case with really stiff recoiling big Magnum revolver rounds, and to the point where it won't even rotate anymore. They jump out so far, the cylinder won't rotate. So it can be a real thing. So yeah, crimping will make your bullets, rounds, cartridges more durable for feeding.
Yep,
So
I've actually seen that happen on the range, CW. I had a guy in the range. He was shooting. He had multiple revolvers with him. First one he was shooting just fine. The next one he goes to shoot, first one goes off. He goes to pull it to go again, and it won't move. And he's looking at it, and he's looking at it, and can't figure it out. And I walk up and I'm like, hey, you got an issue? He's like, yeah, something's going on. I look at it and you can see the bullet is shifted. You know,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
doesn't take a whole lot.
I'll mention one other thing too. One kind of getting back to the primers themselves, and CW was talking about, small pistol, large rifle, small rifle, and some of the differences, even within the same genre of primers. Look at this. Okay, so here's one brand of primer, right? The Servicios, small pistol primers, more small pistol primers. More small pistol primers. More small pistol primers. More small pistol primers. And even more small pistol primers. And every one of those primers is going to display different primer signs in your brass when you take it out.
Man,
They're all going to look a little bit different. And so you got to know your primers. If you're unsure of what primers to use, look at the book. And all of those reloading books tell you what primers they used to produce those sets of data, and start with those. But if you like me and you got a lot of primers because you bought them when they were on sale somewhere, then you need to learn what those primers are going to do in that round. And these Federals, they're going to flatten if you say boo to them.
Yep.
They're real soft and they'll spread out. You go, oh my goodness, I've got really high pressure, and not necessarily. That's just a real soft cup, and they're made that way for a couple of reasons. But maybe you're shooting a comp gun and you got you got light springs and stuff, and so you would use those. But they're going to flatten out and spread out across that primer pocket really easily compared to the CCIs or something, which are pretty hard. So know your primers, pay attention to them, particularly when you're getting started.
In your manuals, what it's called is a recipe, and there's ingredients in that recipe. And anytime you change any ingredient, you can have a problem.
Yep.
What that loading manual is, it's a group of components that were put together by the author that were safe under his conditions on his day and his firearm. It's a guide. It should be safe in everybody's all the time, should be, but it's a guide. So you might find that it's too much for your gun at your elevation, at your conditions, on the day you were shooting.
Yeah,
more than likely it's not going to be that way, but it can be. I have had factory rifles that could not shoot factory ammunition. Now, was there something wrong with that rifle? Quite possibly. But my point is, it can happen.
Yep, and we've said it many times before. When in doubt, load down a little bit. You can always go up.
So if you change something in your recipe, let's say we're loading 9mm, and it calls for a certain kind of powder. That's a big one. Everybody knows you can't just change powder. You got to use the powder it says. But a lot of people will say, well, I don't have a Hornady 124. I've got a Sierra 124. Is that going to be okay? Probably, but it's different. Different is different. So, you got to be aware. And it calls for Winchester primers, but I only have CCI. Is that going to be okay? Probably, but it's different. Different is different. So anytime you find different, you got to back off. At the very least, start at the starting or slightly lower than the starting and work back up, because different is different. Just like pushing that bullet in a little too far, setting the bullet out a little bit farther is going to generally lower pressures. But if it doesn't function or it's jammed up into the rifling, you're going to spike pressures with jacketing. So follow the recipes exactly as they are until you know and understand what it takes and what you can change. But know the reasons and the results of your actions before you do those kind of things. Until you know, follow it like it's the gospel, because it's what's going to keep you safe.
There are several people in this world that, as far as reloading, I call them Yoda, Obi-Wan, this and that, and I kind of pride myself on being at that level, although I haven't named myself. CW, the man up here in this corner, is he's a Yoda, and it comes from playing with so many different cartridges and so many different powders and knowing how they interact with different things. And a lot of times we take that for granted, and we're like, oh, well, you're just blah, blah, blah. Well, maybe the guy's only loaded 44 Magnum, which I suggest anyone, if you're starting out reloading, Abby started out with a bottleneck cartridge. That's kind of scary, when you start out with a bottleneck cartridge. I always suggest people start out with a straight wall pistol cartridge and just bail that booger so the bullet goes in smooth, and crimp it on a separate step, and you're good. It's so much simpler, and you get good results pretty quick. But certain powders, guys, if you're messing with pistol powder, and you can do that in a rifle or a pistol, 300 Blackout comes to mind, and I'm sure some of the new straight walled stuff. I don't know, CW, you might want to add something there. I don't know what 350 or 400 Legend uses, or the 360 Buckhammer or whatever. But when you start messing with H110 or Unique or Tight Group, a dab, especially with Unique, it goes up it's like an earthquake. It goes up exponentially. It's not like, oh, I just added a grain. No, you didn't. You just made it a 7.8 on the Richter scale. You got to know the characteristics of the powder you're working with.
Yeah, and they're all different. Some are really, really, you have room. Some you have no room.
Yeah. That H110, most of the time, it's a narrow window.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to be careful. You got to know what's going on, and you don't assume anything. Just remember what I said. Different is different.
Right.
Different is different. Anything is different. It's different. So you handle it different. Go back. Start over. If you're using X powder and you run out, you open a new can. Guess what? Back it off. Start from the scratch, because it's a new lot number. It's a new mix. That powder is a new recipe to make that powder. All the components that make that powder is a new batch. It may not be exactly the same. And you may say, yeah, CW, you're full of crap. I've done that 10 times. Well, guess what? Number 11 might blow your gun up. So just trust me. Just back off a little and work back up.
It's like,
and
somebody loves you. Somebody's going to be happy I told you that and that you did it.
Yeah.
My thing is people that are newer to loading, and they're like, I want, power. Start in the middle. Make 5 rounds. Go test them. It's functioning fine. Okay, now make a ladder load up from that. I go up by 0.1 gram. Well, I go up by like a 0.25, 0.25, 0.25, and I look for a node where the accuracy happens. Okay, and then I back from that node. I go down in 0.1 grain loads and go up in 0.1, and I'll load 3 or 4 bullets, 0.1 each, grain lower, or upper, and I'll take, I'll make 5 of each, and then I go to the range. First, I heat up the barrel, get a few shots, through it so it's warmed up and not clean, and I'll take the first 5, and I'll pick the target, and I shoot 5. I look at the group. Okay, I'm looking at the brass as well, but then I go up that 0.1 grains and see if anything changed. And all this, you may go up 1 or 2 times, 0.1, and all of a sudden the group comes close. You can close a 1-inch group to just over a ½ inch. So now you've got a node. Now you go up another 0.1. Is it tighter, the same? Or did it open? And that's what you're looking for with that node. And that's only for that can of powder. Like you said, you get another can from a different lot, and you do that same load. It may look good, but if you went up 0.1 or went down 0.1, you'll tighten it up maybe. So I don't look for that super hot load. I try to find that node in the area if I want to be. I look at the book and say, okay, this is 2,000 feet per second is where I want the bullet to be. I can go to 24 and I can go down for sure. So I'll start at something around 2,000 feet per second, and I'll work my way up in 0.1 grains till I find that node in that area of the speed I want, the velocity I want, and check each round for pressure signs. I'm lucky that Winchester powder I have tons of. It's all the same lot. 48 pounds of that stuff, all the same lot.
I tend to talk to people like they've been reloading for years, and I appreciate the panel because y'all always bring me back and kind of say, well, yeah, okay, that's advanced, but when you start, and I remember vaguely of when I first started reloading my first centerfire rifle bottleneck cartridge, and buddy, I was a little worried about pulling that trigger. That was years ago, and did I do this right? And then you gain confidence and you learn the characteristics. But this day and age, really, there's not a lot of powder available. You can only get what you can get. Don't go off the reservation too much, guys. Don't buy something that's not in your reload manual or any reload manual for a particular cartridge. In other words, you're going to screw up if you try to put 48-31 in a 9mm. Okay, it's not coming out the barrel. It's just kind of stay in your lane, and if you're a beginner, you can start to play. A lot of times I'll tell people, well, I went off the reservation with this or that. I've got 30 plus years of reloading experience, and it's my fault that I tend to make light of safety, not really trying to tell people to do something unsafe, but to tell people to do something above their experience level. And don't do that. Learn slow. Slow's better. All digits are better. All face is better, except with me. I don't have a face for podcast. Radio, yes. Podcast, no.
So all this information is not a big mystery. It's all in your better loading manuals. It's all written out there and listed. It's something that we've all told all beginners at one time or another, and that is to buy a manual and read it. It's in there. It's all in there. This is not things that are just hidden away in our brains that you need to ask us. It's there in black and white. Lyman manual has it. The Sierra manual, the Spear manual, the Hornady manual. It's in all of them.
Yeah,
So,
and we said it many times before, but always don't just go off of one. Compare multiple and figure it out as you go. Compare them up. You don't want to just go off of one and hope that it's going to work out fantastic.
Really, really good point. Today, we got all kinds of new loaders, and it's not something that anybody on this panel is really smitten by, but that is computers. I mean, all of us, I think, on the panel grew up before there was computers. Maybe Pat, the only one that may not, but
that's right. I had typewriting class in high school.
Yeah, there was no computers when I was in school. It was I took typing.
We had granite etching. We had granite etching in class.
When you did your homework, you went to the encyclopedia. You went to the library. You did research. That's where that was our computers. Today, everybody wants to look it up. They want it instant. They look online and they get all this information. So it's fine to get data offline, but know where you're getting that data from. And don't trust one piece of data or one recipe, as I keep saying. Don't trust one. Verify it. Find it in a couple of places. Find it from a couple different sources to verify that that's a safe load. If you find it in a written reloading manual, you're a little more safe to assume that it's correct. But even then, like Jason just said, verify that. You find it in a Lyman manual, open a Sierra. You find a Sierra, open a Hornady. You find a Hornady, open a Spear. Open a Barnes. Open somebody else's manual. Check it out. Call up your buddy. You know, you got a friend who reloads. Hey, you got a Hornady manual? I don't have one. Can you check this? Just to double check that it's not a misprint, because things 6s and 9s can get transposed, totally different stuff. You know, that's why if you go on forums at all, and Mike is going to know this right away, a lot of forums don't let you or don't want you to recite data for reloading. Yeah. And that's because you can make a mistake, and it's not your fault, really. I mean, you're going off memory, and you just got in a fight with the old lady. You just reprimanded your kid. You just got in a car accident. I don't know. You didn't have a beer tonight. It doesn't matter. It's something that's that happened to you that made you screw up that thing you thought you remembered perfectly well, and it's not 53, it's 35. And what the heck was I saying? It's not 125 grain, it's a 55 grain.
I've personally had that happen. I was switching over, going back into 44 Magnum, and I went to go grab a powder, and I'm like, I think that's it. And I start to pour it in, and I go, no, that could be really bad.
Yep. And there's one powder that comes to mind right away when you said that, and that is Reloader 7.
Yep.
Accurate Arms number 7.
Yep.
That one's a rifle powder, and one's a pistol powder.
Yeah.
You will blow something up if you switch those.
Yeah. Another thing too, and this is something I've seen on both 300 Blackout. Don't get me wrong. I'm not the forum god here. I've only been on a couple of forums, and 300 Blackout was one, and Accurate Shooter is another. But every once in a while, you'll get someone that comes in and they're promoting a certain powder, and then they say they're a Hodgkin rip or an Alliant rip or whatever, and they're really promoting this powder hard. Well, if someone's promoting something really, really hard, Andy, you and 10, that's I exclude you, okay, buddy. I trust you with that. But when someone's on a forum promoting something really, really hard, you have to be suspect of where they're coming from, who's paying their bills. Did they just get some free crap and they're trying to push it on you? And we had that on both those forums, okay? And the same actors, usually they got called out pretty quick, especially on 300 Blackout. I was a big-time jerk. CW was a big-time jerk. And a couple other guys would say, hey, a-hole, what's your motive here? Why are you pushing this?
Funny fact, Mike and I actually bumped heads and had a little PM behind the scenes to,
oh my God.
What is your problem?
Yeah. What is your problem, buddy?
Yep.
And we actually bumped heads, and it was an oversight. I was kidding. CW was actually doing me and another guy were shooting a lot of stuff in wet pack and ballistic media. And then CW came up with this really excellent post where he had dissected these bullets, and you could actually look at the jacket and see where it was thin, where it was thick, why it worked, why it didn't work, this and that. And I was busting his nuts and saying, oh, come on, man, we've seen all that. Come on, man. And he jumped I deserved it. I deserved it. But anyway, we ended up buddies. So, it's one of those things where you don't have any inflection of voice. So not being a 13-year-old, I don't use emojis much. And that's really how you ought to approach a forum. When you're giving someone advice, you need to put smiley faces or laughy faces or reassuring things up there to know them you're not jerking their chain. And CW was old school. I was old school. couple of those guys were old school, and we just type out what we were thinking. Sometimes it came off pretty rough, and that's where that went. But I've been friends with CW for God knows a long time. Make believe friends. Yeah, I only see you exist right here. We've never actually met, but we've been friends for a long, long time. If I was buying a brand new cartridge and needed to know what was the best dyes, the best powder, the best bullet, and I knew he had shot it, I would not hesitate to call him. And then I still follow his deer hunting season and his coyote hunting, and text him from time to time and ask how things are going. And I always like making fun of his winters since I live down south. I really like making fun of Dellett's winters. He lives in Montana. So our other buddy lives in Montana, and he's a ballistic guru. He's another Obi-Wan. And that guy actually, and I'm going to touch on this, and I'm trying not to lose you new reloaders, but we had a guy on our forum that would work for Homeland Security, and he had a SIG 300 Blackout, and he lived on the Outer Banks of North Carolina at like 2 foot above sea level, and he wanted to try this ballistically superior bullet and prove that he could do one-shot hits out to 800 yards with a 300 Blackout. And he sent his information to our buddy Dellett, which his name's Todd. And Todd did the JBM ballistics. We have so many tools available to us now that I didn't have when I first started reloading. Ballistic tables, stuff you can punch into a computer, and it's crap in, crap out. So if you put in the good stuff, it's going to give you good stuff out. Well, Dellett put in the good stuff, and he came up with a load for him for. He's in Montana at how many feet elevation? CW, like 10 grand. And he came up with data for 2 feet above sea level, and the guy goes out and in front of witnesses and goes 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, one shot, hits the gong, and then the wind starts blowing. He second guesses himself, makes an adjustment, misses the 800-yard shot, turns it back to where he had it. Bang, hits it, second shot with a 300 Blackout. Now, supersonic, of course, and a really high BC, like 150-ish, 160-ish class bullet. I can't remember what, but that is, to me, that was the pinnacle of watching someone that really knew what they were doing formulate a load. For a gun he never held, for a place he'd never shot. And just knowing air densities and humidities and this and that and back and forth, those two came up with a load that would work. Pretty remarkable and pretty remarkable. It harkened back to a NASCAR reference of Smokey Unick. I don't know if y'all know who Smokey Unick was, but he had the garage in Daytona. He was probably one of the best mechanics there ever was. And they asked him to design or build a motor to run Pikes Peak. And he built it and sent it to Pikes Peak. And they opened up the crate and it said, "Do not crank under 10,000 foot elevation." Now, how did that guy build that thing and get the air right, the carburation right in Florida? He did it. It won the record. So I've seen some pretty amazing things in my day. There's a lot better shooters than me. I just, and Red Raider, who's on the forum or on the side chat tonight, I watched Red Raider get a mentor down in Texas and start bench rest shooting. And then the last couple groups he sent me, what do you think? And I'm like, why are you asking me, buddy? I mean, he's shooting the same hole, short range bench rest. I mean, pretty awesome to watch someone progress. And it's all about practice, shooting a lot, reloading a lot. You know, I can't say that enough.
Oh, Hillbilly dropped out. He lost his internet, so hopefully he comes back, because we're at the time for our verse of the week, and we did have a little something planned, but I don't know that I can do it all by myself, and we didn't fill Jason in beforehand, so hopefully we'll give him a little bit of time, and hopefully he can get back on here.
And CW, I can do a quick Gene spot if you got I got what's Mikey got. Anyway.
Yeah, we didn't have Gene either, so we didn't have a what's
That's
hot.
right. That's right.
Yeah, Gene's not feeling too good either. He sent me a message saying he wasn't feeling too good.
Yeah, he was under the weather last week too. So hopefully it's not the same thing, but that's too bad. Sorry to hear that.
Bird flu.
Yeah, hopefully.
Did you hear that now? There's a new strain of bird flu. It's affecting cows.
Yes.
Anyway, I'm going to bail out. We'll be on the side chat for about 10 minutes or so. So
yeah, you believe that one.
I really enjoyed this chat. It was good.
All right, Andy. Thank you.
Good night, Andy.
Thank you for
Good night, Andy.
But where Gene had the blank, I got the live.
BMG.
Yes, sir. It ain't been hit. I used to stir my cocktails. And this, y'all are probably more interested in this. Let's see if I can get this focused.
Mostly.
You got it.
It's a cute little bugger.
That is a 6 PPC. So probably one of the most accurate cartridges in the world. Don't ask me. PPC is 3 men's names. It's Palomasano, and I can't remember the second guy, and then the third guy was a big rider, a gun rider. And Red might come in on the side chat and tell me what it is. But anyway, short range bench rest, 1 to 300 yards is really, really hard to beat. There are guys on Accurate Shooter, you hear them start whining about their guns not being competitive anymore because they're shooting in the 2s. And that means a group of 5 as 2000s. Yeah. From center to center, 2000s. So, oh, my gun's not competitive anymore. I'm like, well, it'll still hit a god darn groundhog. You know, just there's no reason to buy a $600 barrel. But these guys do it all the time.
Yep, for sure. So what else in pressures did we not touch on or highlight or talk about? I know we did mention a little bit about neck sizing, but like I said, that's indirectly associated with pressures. So that kind of more reloading aspected than it is really pressure related.
Did you have you talked about kind of focusing on what the gun is doing as well and paying attention to what the feel of it is and how it's going in your hands?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jason, we touched CW touched on that.
First two things were sound. You know, if you get an extra loud report, that's something happened, and then recoil. That's another one.
Okay.
Maybe even more important, an extra quiet report.
And that's something I think I mentioned it before. Is I'm a reloader and I'm listening to my wife shoot, cowboys load, and I'm going, ooh, that didn't have a lot of powder. Ooh, that one had too much powder. I can just hear it.
Yeah.
It's like, man, I need to fix that so it'll be a little bit more even. It doesn't really hurt in cowboy shooting, but I just hear it and it annoys me.
Right. I knew a guy that my cousin was loading for him on, well, I won't mention the press, but it wasn't a Dillon, okay? And it was Progressive, and that guy was running his 45 Glock, like, there you go, Jason, a Glock. He was running an old Glock, rapid fire, pow, 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 and one went pit. And then he pulled the trigger again, and the gun came apart in his friggin' hand. Unsupported chamber, bullet lodged. It would have blown up anyway, no matter the chamber. But fortunately, the guy only got a couple stitches.
So James brings up a good point here, and what he's talking about is not something you're going to feel or see or hear. Although you certainly could, if you have one of those times where you get that extra recoil, you get that extra sound, you get that hard bolt lift. You set that case aside or you mark it somehow. When you get back to your bench, you measure it. And what you'll see is the base of your cartridge, your base of your case. Basically, when you reload, you don't. Most cartridges don't reload by passing them completely through a sizing die. So, why I say it that way is the very base of the case does not get sized because it's very thick, and for it to be too large, you're way beyond pressures. You know, Mike had mentioned 80, 90,000 psi to stick that case to that in that bolt head. If you know what a bolt looks like for, let's say, a Remington 700, that the cartridge actually sits down in a cup. It's actually supported all the way around, and then there's an extractor in there that holds your extractor groove that holds the case in, and then there's a little button with a spring on it that pushes up. And when the case is in the chamber, that spring pressure pushes that little button and it holds the cartridge in the chamber. When you pull it back, the bullet can flip out and that spring pushes on one side and flips it out. So when you get really high pressure, that spring can actually dimple the back of your case. It'll show that it's dimpling. And if it's dimpling, if it's allowed to dimple, you got some pressures. And what happened with that guy Mike had with the Varget, too much powder, the case had actually expanded so much that it swelled and it stuck in that cup of the bolt. It couldn't come out. So what James is talking about there is measure your case heads. When you have a good piece of brass, you measure it and it comes out to whatever it comes out to, 475, whatever, a 3006, let's just say. And you start measuring your ones that are higher pressure and you're seeing, oh, wow, that's 480. That's 478, 470. You're 2,000-3,000 swelled. Well, that's only going to happen when you've got overpressure stuff. So if you're starting to see that, there's a sign that you need to back off if it's not already seen or noticed by other methods.
Andy mentioned that paperclip thing.
What he's talking about is that you run a paperclip down the inside of a fired case, and that's more seen when you have a headspace problem.
Right.
We all know about trimming cases. If you're a reloader, your cases grow, and they grow exponentially, but they also grow less for low pressure and more for high pressure. But some case designs don't flow as much as others. Let's just look at, say, 9mm, 380, 40 Smith & Wesson. They generally almost never need to be trimmed. You can see a little bit of growth with some of them, but most of the time you never need to worry about trimming them. You step up to the Magnums, 57, 44, 41, you start to see, you need to trim every once in a while. You step up into the rifle stuff, and that's pretty much needs to be trimmed regularly. And if you don't trim it, what happens is that brass grows to the point where it starts to get into the lead. The lead is an area in your chamber what starts to taper down to go into the rifling. And if you get your brass up into that lead, when you fire your cartridge and your brass expands from the gases, your neck that holds your bullet cannot release as much. So it's holding the bullet even though it's got pressure and it's opening up. That can cause pressures to come up just by too long of a piece of brass. You can actually have that so bad that your brass is up there near your rifling, and you can actually get some serious spiked pressures because it doesn't release your bullet.
And the one of the side effects, I don't think P.O. Ackley was actually going for this. He was trying to figure out how to make a more efficient cartridge in the day of the long slope Coke bottle cartridges. And he would 40 degree the shoulder and blow it way out. And they found, wow, you never need to trim these things because you had a hard wall there that was 40 degrees and the neck didn't stretch. And it's true. I have a 260 Ackley, and the sharper the neck. So when you get into 308, arguably, wouldn't you say, CW, a 308's already a kind of an improved case. You don't get as
more modern design. Yeah,
exactly. You don't get as much stretch as you say would get at a 30-06 with about the same velocities.
Really old would be like a 300 H&H or a 22 Hornet. If you can picture those 30-30, really, really slow tapered shoulders. And with low pressure powders and pressures and the way things ran back in the day, it worked fine. It worked really well. But as soon as you get into the more modern, higher pressure stuff, that's why you see, cartridges, modern cartridges like 284 Winchester is a pretty modern design cartridge. And you get the step even more modern. You got the Creeds and the such. They all have much sharper shoulders, more parallel sides. They're less tapered. And all those things, the straighter walls and the sharper shoulders, all work towards less growing. There's less of the brass is going to grow. You're only going to grow in your neck, and that's just a short little piece of brass, so it doesn't grow as much. Still does. It still stretches. And, the whole thing started with headspace. So you go inside with a paper clip, and as the cartridge grows, as the case grows from firing, it's got to stretch somewhere. And usually it stretches right at the base where the web of the case inside it's really thick and it thins down abruptly. It'll thin there. I've got a couple of videos on it. I actually had a couple of case head separations. And that what happened is it stretched so much that it thinned down so much that it actually came apart. And it leaves the front part of your case in your chamber. When you open your bolt, you just get the base. And you check that with a little piece of wire. If you can feel it, you can actually feel a little step inside your case because you can't feel it from the outside. You can sometimes see a ring, but you won't feel it. And if you toss them.
A case head separation isn't necessarily dangerous, but it's a pain in the butt to get out of the chamber. It's a pain in the butt.
I'll give you a secret and a tip for that. You just take a bronze brush of the right size. You stick it in. And you ever stick a bronze brush in your barrel and try and pull it back out? It doesn't want to go. When you do that in your chamber, you stick it in the brass and you pull it out. It grabs the brass and it pops it right out.
Yep. Anybody else got any horror stories or examples?
I should quick reading through the side chat, see if there's any points there that we need to bring up.
And I've been guilty of not looking at the side chat as much. I don't know how. I know Abigail just posted. I don't know how her 30-06 went, if she has shot it yet. I know it was her first time putting some stuff together.
So one thing to touch on, I don't know if anyone's touched on it or not, but for those of you that don't remember, this past Wednesday was the anniversary of Mr. Willie Bulletman.
Yes, it was.
So if y'all knew Willie, and, you know, I know life happens and stuff, you know, just take a minute to remember him a little bit and think about him. Not a day goes by, I don't think about Willie.
What a great guy. I mean, I only met him one time, and he brightened my day. You know, he brightened my life. Really, he just such a good guy. Life was fun for Willie, wouldn't you say, Jason?
Oh
Just
yeah, man.
everything was just hilarious fun.
It wouldn't. One of the best things about Willie was it didn't matter what BS he was dealing with, he would always try and make the best of it, no matter what. And that's a testament to the man himself. It's a testament to the outlook on life he had.
Yeah.
You know, you get thrown a bag of lemons. Don't make lemonade. Make something better than lemonade. He went out and he would always try to make it better. Always tried to look on the bright side of things and do what he could. And if you were having a really shitty day and not doing good, he would try to make sure he'd bump you up. Even if he was still dealing with stuff, he'd try to make sure he was bumping you up.
Yeah.
And I have to say that's probably one of the best things about Willie that you know I can attest to is it didn't matter what he was dealing with. He would go out of his way. It could be a 2 or 3 hour phone call just to make sure you're okay and get you back up and going where you need to be, even though he's dealing with whatever he was dealing with at the time.
When
You know,
Jamie
Willie would sit there and talk to you for the longest time just to make sure you're all right.
When Jamie and them came up to my shop, Willie flew in from California, spent the night with Jamie, and they drove up, you know, and Jamie and Kyle and them came into the shop and they're looking around and I'm like, hey guys, how are you? And Willie comes walking in the shop and here I am. It's summertime. I'm low on inventory. Willie comes in loud as crap. It's the best gun shop he's ever been in. You know, he's just slapping me on the back, telling me, man, this is friggin' awesome. And you know, he made me feel great. He had that effect on people.
Well, you got to give him a break. You live in California, so anything outside of California is probably one of the better.
Hey, I wanted to hear that nonsense, man.
Well, hey, it's true.
I want to tell you guys something. Willie, when I first started reloading, he was one of the first ones to send me something. He actually sent me a Lee C press, you know, the those C press that they have, the single stage.
Sure. Yep.
I still have it. And I think about him a lot. I actually bought a couple things from him. I remember when he bought some stuff from I think it was some sort of yard sale, whatever it was.
It was an estate sale. An old guy.
Estate sale. Yeah.
An old guy passed away, and they were getting rid of his
right.
stuff.
No, so I bought a couple of dies, so I still have them. I was reloading 308 not too long ago, and I was using those dies, and I was just thinking about him.
Yeah,
and,
pretty cool. I remember that.
Yep. And I remember during this whole time, I was dealing with a lot of stuff because I deal with a lot of PTSD and stuff like that. So for both of us being, you know, soldiers and he kind of relates with me on a lot of these things. And I remember him calling me just to cheer me up. And sometimes he was just too loud. And you know me, I'm very type A. So I'm like, shut the fuck, you know, and you know, because he's so loud, man. And it's like my ears hurt, dude. Like, calm down, you know. But that's just the way he was. He's a good dude. I can only say good things about him. You know, we bump heads a couple of times, you know, because sometimes he would say things he shouldn't say, but you know, for the most part, he was a good dude, and he really cared about whoever was out there. I remember he even made a video showing me how to cast. So just little things like that I never forget. So
Yeah, man. My first time casting, I spent over almost 4 hours on the phone with him. He spent the entire time while I was casting with him.
Oh, he gave me so much crap when he saw that video of me using the glass.
I
The
remember.
glass table.
We all
Oh
gave
my
you
god,
crap.
he gave me so much crap, and I was like, "Hey, dude, I didn't know." It's like, yeah, but it was fun.
Yep.
All
No,
right,
I
we're getting
remember
near
that.
our
State,
end of
I remember
our
that
shift here.
state sale too. He had a couple different die sets I was looking at, and I told him I was interested in them, and I asked him how much, and I never got an answer. And I asked him again how much, and I never got an answer. And next thing I know, a package shows up at my door, and I'm like, dude, come on.
Yeah, he was bad that way. I think he got many of us the same. Of
Yeah,
course,
Scott's-
there's somebody named
Scott's-
Weasel that's in the same ballpark there. So that's a little call to kettle black there. If I have
The
to
guy
say.
to your right has a tendency of doing that too. Just so you know.
Also, another anniversary. This is the anniversary of Chris Kyle's death, who was a Navy sniper and was trying to help veterans with PST.
Yep.
Help me, Mario. PSTD. I get that confused. PTSD. Yes.
Yes, thank you.
And
I think his biggest flaw is that he cared too much about veterans to the point that he would trust them. And honestly, the situation with this Marine that shot him, he was in a level that it's not safe for him to even hold the firearm. And I think he was just trying to help him because I'll be honest with you, and I know this sounds weird to a lot of people, but shooting a gun calms me down, you know. And I think that's what his mentality was. You know, maybe you get him shooting a couple rounds down range, it's gonna calm him down. It's gonna get him back to how things were. And unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. And not sure what the altercation was. Unfortunately, he was by himself in the range, which is another thing that I still don't understand why that happened. But
well, he had a friend with him, and the friend got shot too. There were 2 people killed that day, and how they took their eyes off this guy, I don't know. But it's you're right. With Chris's discipline. Being a sniper, I can see how that would calm you shooting, but I'm not a veteran. I have friends that are. For some, they won't even hear gunfire, and I understand.
yeah, it depends. I don't know, man. Most people that I know that were with me in Fallujah and all the other places are like, no. For a lot of us, it's like
Doing it is 2 different things, though. Hearing it and doing it are 2 different things.
Yeah, no,
Sure, absolutely, for sure. Because fireworks can be a trigger, but going to the range and shooting it with it in your hand it's just different. It's not the same.
because you can control it. You can't
And
control.
everybody's different.
You can't control some idiot, going out there shooting an M80 that sounds like a motor run.
I had a friend of mine he's passed away now, and he was in the Army in Vietnam, and he came out E7, so really high up sergeant, and he was down here helping me change tires on my tractor, rims and tires on my tractor. And my neighbors I've got 15 acres of woods, and they've got a 15-acre flower farm, and they're Laotian. And they were out in the field, and they were talking in that language. And Bill looked up at me, and his eyes got real wide, and I said, "Bill, you okay?" He said, "Can I go inside and get a cold drink of water?" And I actually held him, put my arm around him, and walked him back up the hill and gave him a cold drink of water, and it was rough to see. So, just their talking cut him loose, and
Well, a smell, a feeling, a time, a temperature. There's triggers that you don't even comprehend. Mario will tell you the triggers are just unbelievable.
The
just-
triggers for me are the smell of burning trash. It'll irritate the crap out of me. So like when we had the fires here in California, I was just in
oh
bad
man,
mood.
I bet.
So, 4th of July, I literally had to get drunk off my butt, just to deal with it.
here's a good analogy. I think we've all had it. How do you feel when a song comes on the radio you haven't heard since you were in high school, or a fire, a smell of a certain kind of wood brings you right back to a verse in a song, a note on a TV. It brings you back to a first girlfriend or whatever. I mean, that's
Right.
the same exact thing. That's the trigger, and it's exactly the same thing. It's as if you were there.
Yeah. There's a lot of things. I can tell you guys from my experience. I remember when I came back from my first deployment, I had just come back and I was there. I relieved the invading force in Iraq. So I was there, when it was pretty hot. And it got to a point where I came home and I felt helpless without a gun. Like not having a gun just irritated me because I used to sleep next to my Beretta, or had a Beretta with me, or I had my M16A4, had a 203 on it, so I always had that with me. Like it was like, and not having it was the thing that used to make me upset. And to make a long story short, one time I wasn't getting enough sleep and it was like 2 a.m. and I woke up and I was hallucinating. That I could literally see people jumping the fence line like to my front yard. And it was all like, some people that I saw in Fallujah and all that stuff, like insurgents, with the man dresses and AKs, and I mean, it was like clear as day. And that's when I decided, I was like, I need to get help, like bad. So yeah, and it was bad. So it's there's a lot of things that do trigger. There's a lot of things that I think also the survivor guilt aspect of it is another thing that really affects you. I think the best thing that a lot of veterans can do is look out, find another veteran that's been there, done that, man, and touch bases with them. Because the biggest problem that we have with veterans is that, once they leave, or they leave the what you call the tribe or whatever, you go back to civilian land or whatever. Most people don't understand you because less than 1% has served.
Right.
Yeah, it's a big thing. And I can say this from experience because I mostly all I ever hired was veterans, and specifically just because they had a lot more handling experience than anyone else did. They had a lot of handling experience. So I mostly what I hired, and I saw a lot over the years with dealing with that. I had one guy in particular, real nice guy. Well, in my opinion, anyway. Everyone else thought he was an ass. But they thought that because they didn't understand him. They were scared of him. He was ex-special forces and super badass guy, real nice guy, in my opinion, like I said. But he was a certain way, and if you don't know how to take it, then you would think he was someone else, and you wouldn't like it. But like myself, I understood where he was coming from, so I just worked with him, and he was fine with me. Everyone else There'd always be problems, or always be issues. And it was one weekend, and I wish he would have called me because I would have helped him out. But one weekend, for whatever reason, he got blazing ass drunk, and then decided he was going to go to the gas station that was closed and bust in the window with his car in order to go get more beer.
Bad move.
Bare ass naked.
Oh Lord.
And it took 6 or 7 cops to get him down on the ground and get him in the car and all the rest of it. I heard the story the next day, and it was probably about a week later before he was finally able to come back to work. And obviously they let him go, and there was nothing I could do about it. I tried to protect him the best I could, but there's nothing I could do about that at that point. But it's like, dude, why didn't you call me, man? Like, it's like my only thought was, in this zone right here, that was it. Tunnel vision. I want a drink. I'm gonna get a drink, and that was it. And a lot of times that's what happens with them. And it happens to us too. We'll get that tunnel vision, and the best thing that people can do is have someone to reach out to, have someone that's there for you, someone that you get along with.
Well, with Mario's sense of humor, I can honestly say, since Jamie's not here tonight, I've got a lot of veterans that are customers, and they seem to open up to me a lot. And a lot of times when they
go ahead, Oprah.
Yeah, really. when they start talking, I'll say, and they stop, I'll say, look, I don't have your experience. I said, but I can kind of attest. I said, I get post-traumatic stress when I hear a jealous husband scream, and I automatically jump out a window. And I said, I'll have to atone for my sins at some point in my life. I said, there you go. And I generally get a laugh out of that. I had a Force Recon Vietnam sniper in the shop today. He's a regular customer, and he told me a story he had never told me about rescuing 2 nurses, him and a Seminole Indian who was also a Force Recon sniper that went in and rescued 2 nurses from a BC camp and had to outrun them. And thank God the river boats were on time when they got there. But the Seminole Indian took around to the wrist and ended up having his hand removed. And George came out pretty much unscathed. But the funny thing was, one of the nurses, he said, I can't remember her real name. We all called her Squeezy. And I was like, what? He said, yeah, Squeezy. I was like, I'd like to have seen Squeezy in her day. I wonder how she got that nickname. But there were 2 nurses that were captured off a fire base. And different war, different time, just as scary. I try to listen. I try to shut up and listen to people's stories. And I hope that's therapeutic to some. Because so many.
I like to tell everybody, the good Lord gave us 2 eyes and 2 nose and a nose and 2 ears for a reason. There's only 1 mouth. So we should be listening and watching a lot more than we're talking. So.
We're getting up to that time. We're past that time, and I know Gary's going live. So
really quick, say some goodbyes. Want to start with you, Mike?
Goodbye. Have a good week, guys.
Walter, you have been a little quiet. I know we didn't reach a topic that's big for you, but you had some.
No, I opened my mouth a few times at the beginning, which is a few times more than it should have, no doubt.
He's worried about mudslides.
Yeah, well, Hey, thanks for the invitation as always to be here and participate. It's always good to see everybody here, especially good to see Mario over here on the panel. I haven't had him around in a while. And we got normal Viejo land stuff coming up next week. We got a moldy Monday. We got a wad cutter Wednesday. We got some other stuff happening too. So thanks, guys. Good to be here. Mario,
Walter.
what you
Okay.
got going, Mario?
Okay, first of all, thank you guys for having me here. I don't know who said this, but I'm gonna say it for all of you guys. There is nothing wrong with saying "Hey." Okay, nothing wrong with it. Okay,
No homo.
I bring a smile to your face. People feel happy afterwards, man. Don't never let other people let you down, man. That's all I got.
Thanks for being here, Mario. You're always welcome, dude. Always a bright spot. You ask some questions that we don't all think of. We like Mike kept saying, we take for granted a little bit of get used to the way things are and seeing outside the box. You bring a fresh new look on things. So I appreciate that. Ricky.
Got 6.
Yeah. Like Mark always says, if you don't see somebody smiling, be that person. And if hey makes you smile, do it. Oh, well, we got some smiles coming tomorrow. We got Cowboys shooting in the morning. Other than that, I'm just trying to stay busy in the reloading room and getting stuff ahead of schedule so I don't get behind.
Oh, quick.
But other than that, that's it for me.
Good deal.
Awesome, man. Good seeing you. Appreciate you. Always good to be here, folks. Sorry I was a little bit late. Again, work schedule and all that, but always good to be here. Good to see everyone out there, and good topics. We had a lot of good conversation tonight. Lots of people inside chat. So thank you to everybody. With that, CW, man, take us up, man.
Thanks everybody for being here. It's over 50 people. That's great. Like Jason said, we lost Willie 3 years ago this week, so give him a thought. Jamie is under the weather a little bit. He's okay. He's just got a cold, but he wasn't fit for viewing. So he's probably going to watch this tomorrow or the next day whenever he feels good. But so think of him, some kind thoughts. I'm sure he'd appreciate a quick prayer. He's okay though. He'll be fine. And just want to thank everybody on the panel and thank everybody in the side chat. And I tried to watch the side chat. I know I had a couple comments there that I couldn't respond to right away, so I apologize for that. But thanks for all the contributions. And thanks for everybody, and really appreciate it. Had a good chat tonight. I think I saw a couple of really nice comments. So thank you very much. And God bless everybody. And we will see you next week. Same bad time, same bad channel.
Say good night, Penny.
Good night, everyone.
Everybody.